I will introduce myself. My name is Melissa Lee, and I am the administrative assistant at the Engineering Care Center up on North Campus. And this is part of our Stressbusters activities. So just some fun activities that we are trying to bring to students. Staff, faculty are welcome to attend just to kind of, enjoy ourselves during this pandemic. And I am going to ask you all if you can put your view on your Zoom to speaker view, and then you should be able to see the cooking demonstration should be the big picture on your Zoom, so you can get the full experience. And also ask that you mute your Zoom as well. We should have some time at the end if you want to ask some questions at that time. And with that, I'm going to introduce Chef Russ, who is the campus executive chef for catering and retail. And I'm going to let him take the floor and give us a nice little cooking demo.
Thanks so much, Melissa. I really appreciate it. This is our second time doing this Stressbusters event. And Stressbusters is a very dynamic exchange of events that is happening. This part of it, like Melissa said, is the cooking demonstration, which for many people that enjoy cooking, they really do find cooking to be a stress reliever. It can be as time involving or non-time involving as you want, but when you really get into it and you enjoy food and you want to make a nice meal, you can put a little time aside and put some time into it and just kind of relax and go through the steps. And that's really what cooking is all about. There's all kinds of different little steps to cooking, and it's very simple, but at the same time it can be very interesting. And all the research that you can do or not do, and just learning a little bit about the techniques of cooking. I'd like to talk a little bit about where we started with how we got the food. There's the food recovery network. There's the food distribution and food gatherers. There's a box that is distributed with food that individuals can go and get for free. And in collaboration with the food gatherers and the distribution of those food items, there is also the Maize cupboard, which is here at the university. So they're two separate things, but in hand, they really do help support the community and allow people to get wholesome food items for free, and it really helps to solve some issues in the community that are going on right now, especially the environment that we're living in today. Times are really tough. So if you don't have food and you need to get out there and access some of these different places where you can get food, it's good to know, what you can get, what you can look for, and how to cook them. And starting first of all with what's in the box for the food gatherers and the distribution. I got that box and I looked through the food items, and there's wholesome food in there. There are items that there are a lot of items that are pre-prepared. So like soups, very basic, just soups where you follow the heating instructions on the can and heat them up and enjoy them. You don't really pair them with something else, unless it's like simple bread and butter or bread or salad or whatever. But cut sweet potatoes and syrup. This is not something that you would really join with other things so much. Maybe in some type of casserole, but it's very sweet. But these can be enjoyed on their own. This is wholesome food. If you have nothing, this is food, and this will bring you nutrition, which is really important in these times. There are other things like packaged tomato sauce, very simple packaged tomato sauce where you heat it up and put it over pasta. and then like some canned vegetables like canned corn, canned green beans. So in collaboration with that, I did go to the Maize and Blue cupboard, and I did a little shopping and looked for what they had there. And I thought that part of this is getting wholesome food, some fresh vegetables, and actually making a meal and relieving stress. So that's kind of what we're talking about today. And you can see here, these are the items what I found at the cupboard quite recently. And when shopping, it doesn't matter where you are. You could be at Meijer, you could be in whatever grocery store, or even at the cupboard. When you go into the cupboard, you're going to look for certain things, just like in a grocery store. You're going to look for your starches, your vegetables, what items can help you, combine and make a sauce for these dishes. Whether you're going to do protein or just vegetarian, it doesn't make any difference. You're going to still look for unique items like cheese or eggs or dairy, and it's no different when you're shopping at the cupboard. Though when you shop at the cupboard, unlike a grocery store, you may not find the same things every single time, and I think that's kind of unique and fun at the same time. So what my thought process was when going into the cupboard, I would look for some kind of staple grain, some kind of starch or some kind of pasta or something like that to just kind of build up from there. And to show you, the first thing I found, and it was right off the bat, you could walk into the cupboard right now and you can find lentils. So lentils are an excellent source of protein. They're very filling. They're very affordable too. There are many different types of lentils, and there are different ways to cook them. And we can talk about that right now, or during this event. But these are a green lentil, and they actually take the longest time to cook, though it is only about 8 to 10 minutes, which is quite short. Most of the other lentils are quite smaller than this, and their cooking time is much shorter. But this is an excellent source of protein and brings a body to the dish that is quite filling for you to enjoy. Also, I found some cabbage, carrot, apple, potato, an onion. Now, right now at the cupboard, they have very petite onions. I'm certain that these are very sweet because they're small. This is just a small onion, and you would treat it no differently than any other onion by just kind of cutting off the sides, cutting it in half, and just kind of dicing it a little bit or slicing it. It doesn't make any difference how big the onion is. This is butternut squash. I'm certain that most of you, or if not all of you, have probably seen this before or have this before or cooked with it. It's a very seasonal vegetable. Similar to this, these items are very seasonal right now. So that makes sense that you would go into kind of a place that gets food from other areas and serves and gives out for free, that they're going to have some seasonal produce. When I found these there, I was very excited about it because I really believe that these flavors really do go well together. And they go well together in many different authentic dishes from different countries all over the world. Not just America. But just to show you how to prepare this, if you've never prepared a butternut squash, this is the outside of the butternut squash. I just simply cut it in half here, and you see it's just like a pumpkin right there. You've got a little bit of the seeds there, and you scoop it out. You just put a spoon in there, a metal spoon of some sort, very small or whatever, and then just scoop that out, and what you got kind of like that. The end piece is what I used for today, and let me just move this aside. There's a couple different ways to prepare this. One, you can just scoop this out, the seeds, and then oil it, put a little salt and pepper on it, put it down on a sheet pan or casserole dish, doesn't matter. You can put it right in the oven and roast it. You can roast this for about, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, depending on the temperature that you use. 325 degrees, 350, convection, no convection. You're really just kind of looking for it to roast and be tender. And you can push a knife kind of just right through it, and it'll glide right into it, and it'll be done. And at that point, you're just removing it from the oven. You're allowing it to cool, and then you're just kind of peeling it off. You know, you're peeling off this outer layer here, and that pulp in the middle, it'll be quite soft. You can chill that all the way and dice it, and then use it into a pasta dish, like we did last Stressbusters event. We had acorn squash. And I did that. I roasted the acorn squash, very similar to this, and then I kind of just chilled it, diced it, and we threw it in with the pasta that we did that time. This time around, what I did, I wanted to get more of a precise cut on the vegetable. So I really just took the peeler and then just went and started peeling away. So you're just gonna peel down just like that.
So Russ, could we have you just speak a little bit louder for us, please?
Yes, of course.
And we do have one question, if there's any suggestions on how to bake squash to make it sweeter tasting, like seasonings or anything like that that you would suggest when you bake it.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. You can add honey. You can add brown sugar. You can combine sugar with your oil or maple syrup, brown sugar and maple syrup. You can add a little bit of butter, some salt and pepper, and you can kind of rub that all over it. Or you can just kind of roast the squash with a little bit of seasoning and then combine those flavors in your dish a little bit later to get that flavor as well, that flavor profile, or whether you make a sauce or something like that. But yes, a lot of vegetables can be seasoned differently, whether it's fresh herbs or lemon and olive oil, or sweet, like you said, using all natural sugars, which are delicious. Michigan maple syrup is amazing, and that's a great question. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Good. So we'll just kind of discard this. Now I'll show you what I did exactly. Oh, I was going to show you actually. Sorry, I was forgetting. What I did, just for the sake of time, I'm just going to kind of go through this. I hope you can see that. Okay. I cut the end off just like that. So that's the easy part right there. This is the difficult part. This is the part, if you're not going to use the whole thing in a dish, then you can use this for possibly a soup or a puree of some sort, added in with other things. And then this, you can get a nice dice on it. Just kind of going down, like super signature or super fine dining. They're going to take this end piece right here and they're going to discard it because it will be an oddity in the dice. But this is wholesome food, so I prefer to use it. But if you're looking for a nice dice, you can just easily kind of cut through this and make these planks. You can make them as thin or as wide as you want. It's very soft, to be honest with you. It's not a very hard squash. And then cut down just like that. I'm just kind of tapping it, and then you just kind of going through and dicing just like that. And what you get is that, and that's a nice kind of little presentation of the vegetable. Okay. So for the dish that we're going to make today, all of the items that I selected, I found that the lentils would be a lot of fun to make kind of a lentil and potato curry. And to make a curry, there are a few items that you would use or you would get from kind of a staple pantry. Very simple items, but it it is wise to have just some staples like salt and pepper and oil. You'll need some kind of cooking medium to use. And then the other thing is, if you have additional seasonings for a curry, you would want to use some kind of curry powder. Curries can be made from scratch, or curries can be bought. There are some that are very affordable, but if you do have curry in your pantry, it pairs very well with this dish. There's another component to this dish that is pretty authentic, though you may not find it and it is rather expensive. It's coconut milk, and we don't have coconut milk today, but it's really not. The dish is really not about the coconut milk. It's about the sweetness of the apple, the butternut squash, and then the savoriness of all the other components, the aromatics, really. Last event, I talked about mirepoix, I talked about aromatics, the combination of ginger, garlic, and scallion, the combination of carrots, onions, and celery, different aromatics that countries use in their cuisine, and they are different from each other, but at the same time they use them at the beginning of a dish and kind of add those notes of flavor that make those authentic type dishes what they are even today, and they have for a long time. So with that being said, we will go right into this. It will seem like a lot of ingredients, and I'll go through them, but the base ingredients that we have is what we found at the cupboard, and then just the aromatics could be kind of a staple in people's homes, whether it's garlic, ginger, salt, pepper, or whatever seasoning. So I've got the induction burner turned on, and that's all this is. This is a very simple device where you plug it in, and certain pans go with it. This is not needed for this dish. You can certainly cook at your home on a stovetop. And this meal is basically a one-pot meal, although we're going to put it over rice. And so, really, you're just getting white rice, which they even have at the Maize cupboard, and you're steaming it. And always with rice, if you're just cooking in water, and you might hit it with a touch of salt, a lot of different rice can be 2 to 1, which is 2 parts water and 1 part of rice. And there's different methods of cooking rice. Stovetop can be tough. If you're going to use a pot to do stovetop with rice, I would recommend one that is a little shorter and wider and has a lid. And if you don't have a lid, you could use tin foil. But if you had a lid for a pot that was shorter and a little wider, you just kind of put the rice in there and bring it up to heat, and then add your water, bring it to a boil, and then turn it down all the way low with a lid and cook it for 10 minutes, and it will come out perfect on the lowest setting that you can do on your stove. And then once your timer goes off, you just remove from the stovetop and just allow it to kind of rest, and then pop the lid and fluff it with a fork, and it will be beautiful. Jasmine rice is excellent. Basmati rice is excellent. Simple white rice will work just as well. And in this dish, we're just keeping it a plain white rice. So the first component that we're going to start with is a cooking medium, and that is a little bit of oil. I just want to make certain that you can see this. That's the oil right there. And this is a blend oil. You can use just plain vegetable oil. If you do use extra virgin olive oil, you just have to know that that's a flavor profile that you're going to have in your dish. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love using extra virgin olive oil, but I will typically use, and we do at the university, use a blend, which is a little bit more subtle in flavor, but quite excellent. So I'm just putting a little bit of olive oil in there. It's really about, a couple tablespoons at most. It may seem like a lot, but you've got to have that medium to cook with, so that the vegetables don't burn on the bottom. The first vegetable that we're going to go in is an aromatic. We've got a couple. but we're going to start with carrot. And the reason why is the carrots, they actually take the longest. Out of all of the things that we're cooking with today, the carrot will take a long time to cook. And when I say a long time, you add it in the beginning because you're just giving it a few minutes before you add something else is wise. It's going to take away that crunch. We're looking for kind of a stew-like texture, though we don't want our vegetables falling apart. That's kind of what we're looking for. So things need to be soft, but at the same time, they keep their appearance so they can see all of those beautiful knife cuts that you made and took all the time to do. So I've added that in there. Just turning up the heat a little bit just to get it going. What's great about a dish like this is it's really very close to being just a one-pot meal. You might have what seems like a lot of components, but at the same time, when you go to cook and you're just cooking in one pot, really, there's a lot less cleanup at home. It takes a lot less time to really do. You don't have to worry so much about having so many different dishes and so many pots and pans and the oven going and so forth. I will say that this particular dish that we're doing today could be baked in the oven. It can be started on the stove and baked in the oven. I would recommend that. Maybe wrap the pot with tin foil and then bake it in the oven at about 325 degrees for about 20 to 30 minutes, and it will come up perfect. It will really come up great. We're doing it stovetop today because the hood system here, if we turn the oven on and we use the hood system, then it's quite noisy, and you probably would never be able to hear me. So I've got the carrots going on here, and they're going quite nicely. It's really just a medium-low heat. I'm adding in the onion.
So Chef Russ, with the oil mixture, what is your mixture? Is there a ratio that you always use?
Yes, it's 30% extra virgin olive oil and 70% vegetable oil. My thing is if you're doing food that's a little bit more, more Asian in the sense where you're going to make, General Chow's chicken or something like that, I would avoid using extra virgin olive oil or any kind of olive oil in that sense. I would use vegetable oil, which is real neutral. Vegetable oil, grapeseed oil, any kind of the neutral oils would work really great for that kind of cooking. In this particular instance, olives would go excellent with this dish. So olive oil is perfectly fine. And the extra virgin olive oil that is in this blend is very subtle in nature. So this is coming along quite nicely. I would really probably cook at that point right there. I would probably let that cook another minute, maybe two, just to kind of soften the carrots, and you can see the translucent, the onions become translucent. But at that point, right then, I was talking earlier about some of the aromatics that some folks may have in their households. Garlic is very pretty. It's kind of a staple of many cuisines, pretty common. So I did get that. I did not get this from the Maize cupboard. And same with this ginger. It's relatively easy to find. And I just want to point out, when working with ginger and garlic, a lot of chefs will take the ginger, and this is peeled ginger here. I kind of peeled off the outside layer. And they really just take, and they'll have a little cube like this. It's not very large, and they just take the flat of their blade and just kind of smash it. And then you can see that's kind of just flat. You'll see this in cooking shows. The internet is great. There's so many cooking shows out there that do this kind of work. But once you do that, once you smash it, you're really just running your knife through it a couple times and it's done. so you don't have to play around with it. I know there's a lot of little devices out there where you can put the little chunk of ginger in it or the garlic and squeeze them and it pushes out. But I think this is actually better, just in the sense that you don't have to clean that little device or whatever or fuss over that. So this is really nice. And there's a little bit of color to it. It's browning a little bit, but not burning on the bottom. I do know that once I add the ginger and the garlic, they're gonna stick a little bit because ginger has that nature of just kind of sticking. So you want to kind of watch the temperature. You know. Here's the ginger. Garlic.
If I didn't have fresh ginger, could I just use like dried ginger?
Yes, you may. Absolutely.
Perfect.
You can use dried ginger. If you don't even have Madras curry powder, you can use a little bit of cinnamon. That would go nice with this dish. It just depends on really what you have. If you don't have any of those things, they're not necessary. I just added them in. I had them available, and they're kind of authentic to the dish. And you know, and the internet is great. You can go online and find recipes very similar to this all over the internet. It's really pretty awesome. But at the same time, doing something like this, we have the freedom of just expression and enjoying ourselves and relieving stress. So once you have that in there, you're gonna start smelling those flavors really just. Once you do smell that and you've got it in there, I mean, really, that was just that was about 30 seconds. That's when you're gonna add in not the curry powder, sorry, the cabbage. And the reason why you want to do that is it's good to kind of sweat some of these heartier vegetables out first before adding your seasoning.
And Chef Russ, we have another question while that's cooking. What are the differences / benefits from using whole ginger or turmeric or other seasonings versus from the bottle?
You know, there's
yeah.
The significance of using them, the differences. Can you say that one more time? Sorry.
The differences or the benefits from using whole ginger or turmeric or other seasonings.
Absolutely. So there are books and books on the medicinal properties of food and spices. You know, I think that a lot of people are very familiar with the knowledge that fresh turmeric and turmeric itself as a seasoning, which has been used for I don't know how long, 1,000 years, actually aid in joint pain and just aid in the way, aid in different ways, like teas. It's almost like teas. If you're drinking teas, herbal teas, a lot of Chinese medicine uses teas or different roots, different seasonings from those roots for whether it could be for your brain or your body or your stomach, healthy for your stomach, like ginger is. Those are all. It's really interesting stuff. There's a lot of time and spent on the research for that and how that affects cooking and the decision making for different trends in the world. It's really great stuff. So here you can see now, this is sweating out, but you can see that your ginger's kind of sticking on the bottom a little bit and browning. That's okay. But when you get to that point, that's when you're really gonna want to add your herbs. Or your seasonings that we have today, and that's curry powder. Now, the curry powder. This is just a simple curry powder I have, and I'm adding about two teaspoons, 3 teaspoons. Just depends on what you like, how subtle you like it, or how strong. This is not a hot spice. It will add a little bit of like peppery kind of spice, but not very much. if you were going to add a hot spice to a dish like this, or use a fresh vegetable for heat, you could use jalapeno. And boy, let me tell you, when you add that in, and you're smelling all the vegetables and the seasonings in there, that really smells good. But at the same time, at this point, it'll kind of dry up all of the liquid that's in here, and it's ready for some liquid. So I am going to add a little touch of salt. And a little touch of pepper. Stir that. And this is just a little bit of crushed tomato. So you could use fresh tomato, you can use diced tomato, any kind of tomato product that you have. You could use, like when I was at the cupboard, I did see like canned tomato soup. You could use that. It's a little sweet. If you did find diced tomatoes instead, maybe in their water, that would be excellent, because it's kind of a little bit more neutral in flavor, and it works really well. So I'm just kind of going in with the tomato. And then I've got a big bowl of water. This is about 3 cups of water, and that's a pretty good amount. As I mentioned before, at that point, if you did have coconut milk, that's when you would use coconut milk. Or you could use vegetable stock. What we're doing today is more plant forward, it's more vegetarian, and it's based on the lentils and the protein from the lentils and the starch from the potatoes to fill you up. So you could use a vegetable stock. But if you did want to use meat in this, say you had ground beef or something like that, or if you had bouillon, you could add that to your stock or the water and make a kind of a broth, and that would be perfectly fine. Even chicken would be fine. Ground beef would work fine with this. So looking in here, you can see that it almost looks like a stew. So at this point, what you're going to do is kind of turn up your heat. And when you turn up your heat, you're gonna start bringing it up to a boil, and that's really what you want to do. You want to bring it up to a boil. But at the same time, what's great about this dish is the stage. It's just like making a stew, where you kind of got stages to it, but you're adding and going, and you don't have to wait for any additional time to add more components to this right now. So the potato, and potato is very easy to cut. You can see I got a pretty nice little dice on this. This will look really, really pretty in the final product. I'm just putting that right in. Same with the apples, just really nice. And whatever apple you can find is perfectly good. This is a sweeter apple. If you had a green apple or something like that and adds a little bit more tart, that works just as well. Our butternut squash. Now, I'm saving the lentils for a little bit later. At this point, with everything in the pot, and you can see that it's quite liquidy, it looks like a soup. You could even serve this as a soup. That's not really what we're looking for this particular dish. You're going to bring this up to a boil, and you're going to cook it for probably about, it depends. If you're going to roast it in the oven like in a pan just like this, you could take this pan in itself and put a cover on it and roast this in the oven. I would say about 350 degrees regular bake for about 15 minutes, I think. It's gonna cook perfectly. If the one One thing I would say though, if you are roasting it in the oven, I would probably do half the cooking time covered and then half the cooking time uncovered, because you do want the liquid to reduce down and thicken, and that's going to be that's preferred for this type of rice bowl. So since we're doing it on stovetop, you would wait until those vegetables are partially cooked, and you're going to want to taste them. I mean, really, I do recommend tasting the dish as you go through. I do prefer to season dishes in stages. We added a little salt and pepper before when we added the Madras curry powder. That's a good starting point. You can always wait until the end to add more salt and pepper. It's very safe that way. But once you make a dish like, and I'm sure not all of you have done this before, where you've made a dish so many times, you kind of know how much salt and pepper, how much you're making and how much salt and pepper you're going to add into something. Adding too much salt always will ruin the dish. You can never take away, right? So waiting to the end is very safe, and it works just as well. And using the different types of salts that we have. If you're using iodized salt, it's going to be so much more powerful than just a regular sea salt. Even the flake of the salt can make a difference, because if you have large flakes of salt, then you're really going to use less of that, and just because the smaller, finer flakes are, just going to add so much more potency at the same time. It's almost like the pepper that we have that we use in different establishments. This is a very, very fine pepper. So just a pinch of this really goes a long way. If you use too much, it's going to overpower the dish and be way too spicy. And not spicy in a good way. So use a little bit at a time, season in stages, make your dish, multiple times, and so that you can really get it the way you want it. And that's a good methodology and relieves a lot of stress. So this is coming up to a boil, and like I said, I would cook this. I would probably simmer this for 10 minutes and get those vegetables partially cooked. You're going to bring it up to a boil and bring it down to a simmer, just to be clear, and just simmer them until those vegetables are perfectly cooked. Once they're at that point, that's when you add in the lentils, because these lentils, the green lentils, they only take about 8 to 10 minutes to cook. But I'm going to add them in just for the sake you can see, and you stir that around. That's about a quarter cup. So it's about a cup of potatoes, about a half a cup of the other vegetables, and then you've got the 3 cups of liquid, and then the lentils. They're really going to bloom, just like a lot of the legumes do. When you're soaking beans overnight, you really are going to put 3 parts water to 1 part of whatever the volume is of the beans in water. Put them in the refrigerator, let them soak overnight, and they will bloom. And so the lentils, we don't really soak them. We're just putting them in there. They're going to bloom, and they're going to grow. And you're going to be able to see them more throughout the dish. You can add more, or you can add less. Just depends on what you like. But the lentils in this dish are the protein. That's the body that's going to not necessarily fill you up so much as like the potato does in this dish, but the protein there is really what's going to be really good for you. That's the other nutritional value of this dish that's really important. You can see by looking at this, it has a really pretty color. I don't want to spill it all over my laptop, but it has a really nice color. Very soupy right now. So, and this has come up to a boil. I bring it down to a simmer. Cook the lentils just till they're perfect, and you'll find that your vegetables will retain their shape. The lentils will cook beautifully, and it'll be great. Now, there's one more component to this that I should mention, and I didn't find this at the cupboard, but a lot of people do have it, is just some simple frozen peas. And what the peas are going to do is they're going to add a little color and a little sweetness that's different than the butternut squash. It's really that eye appeal, because people eat with their eyes, and that's a huge focus for us. Where visually, what does the food look like? Am I going to buy the food or go and enjoy the food in this dining establishment if it looks nice? Can I see it? What does it look like? Is it well balanced? Is it nutritious? Is it beautiful? And that's what people really want to see. These frozen peas will take no time to cook, so you really can just send them in at the last minute. I'm just going to throw them in right now. But if you do overcook them, like if I cook this for another 15 minutes, those peas are going to be like an olive color, and it's not terrible. But if you want them to be really bright green at the end when you serve this dish, and that's when you're going to just throw them in and just get them hot, right? And that'll be perfect. They're already cooked, so it's very simple. So at this point, we're kind of through with putting everything in the pot and talking about the cooking time. Does anybody have any questions so far also? Just curious.
If you want to put your questions in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask as well. But I do have a question. So if I have, a small kitchen and I'm just starting out, what are like the essential cooking utensils that you think that I should get when I'm just starting out my kitchen?
That's a great question. It really is. This particular utensil, you don't need this, but I use it because it's a type of plastic that's heat proof. You can really put this right in there and leave it in there, and it's a spatula, so you can really get the edges. This is a food safe spatula. This is pretty common in restaurants. Now, at home, I will tell you, like my wife's father, he's a woodworker, so he makes wooden spoons. So he makes unique wooden spoons for me. I don't know why he does it, but I absolutely love them. But I would say wooden spoons at home are fine. If that's all you have, that's all you have. One thing I would recommend, though, if you're working with items that are in an oven and you don't necessarily have oven mitts or something like that, what's pretty common is tongs, metal tongs. They can be very affordable tongs, whatever it may be, nothing elaborate, just simple metal tongs are really great for kind of working with getting dishes out of the oven, or if you are deep frying at home, then using metal tongs to kind of pull like a tempura battered piece of cod out of a little pot with oil. Just using tongs really works great. A slotted spoon is excellent. You don't really need a whole lot. Maybe a different variety of knives, like this is the common chef's knife, and to have a little paring knife is great. And then, this is just a simple little peeler here. You don't need a lot to really do a lot. A lot of chefs can do a lot just with their chef's knife. And here we are with one pot, right? So you have a couple pots at home. Maybe one has a lid, maybe not. You got some tin foil. You have your tongs, your knife. You'll need a little cutting board. We use plastic because it's food safe. But it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Melissa?
Yes. And we do have a question in the chat. Brian asked if you have any advice for prepping canned or frozen foods, like defrosting, washing them off, or ways to make them taste better.
Right. So if you're just using canned green beans, or we have right here like the canned corn. You could put this if you had a little strainer. If you have a colander at home, these little kernels might fall through the porous holes of that colander. But if you have a little strainer, you could just kind of open the can, pour the corn in there, and you could just run a little bit of cold water over it, just to kind of get that residual liquid in there off of there. You don't necessarily have to dry it, but just kind of shake it off, put it in a bowl, and then cook with that as you go. Cooking with canned vegetables, you're always gonna, if you're doing a dish like this and you're gonna add canned peas or something like that, you would add it at the end, just like the frozen peas. Very simple. They're already pre-cooked. They're just frozen. They don't take long to cook. You can make soup with this. You really can. You can make a nice, a nice corn bisque. You really can. If you have a little bit of milk and you make a bechamel, and you add corn to it and a little bit of salt. You can make a delicious corn soup with just this one can of corn, and you probably could feed about 3 or 4 people with it.
Nice, nice. Any other questions? Like I said, you can unmute and ask yourself or put them in the chat. With your frozen vegetables, do you thaw them at all, or do you just take them straight from the freezer into your dish?
So it depends on how you work. If you're doing it in a soup, I just go right in from frozen. If I'm doing a pilaf with rice, like I'm gonna have, I've got my rice, I've got 1 cup of rice, and I've got 2 cups of water, and I'm gonna add frozen peas in there. Well, I can add the frozen peas if I defrost them and then drain that liquid off before adding it. I don't really need to add additional rice to accompany for the frozen kind of water molecules that are going to be in there if I just add them in frozen. So if you add them in frozen, it's going to add more water, and then your rice might be soupy, not light and fluffy at the end. You just kind of have to take that into consideration. It's kind of a guessing game at that point. It's really easy to kind of just pull them out of the freezer and throw it in there. You have to just take that into consideration. We might reduce the water just a hair that you would normally cook.
Any other questions?
So to finish up, I have a plate of rice, and I made this dish earlier, so you can see what the finality of it is. Here, I don't know if you can see that very well. Can you see that okay, Melissa?
Yeah, if you want to, bring it up just a little bit higher, closer to your face. Yeah. Okay. That's good.
So you can see that that's quite, that's a very hearty stew. You can see how the vegetables are diced still, and you can see the lentils. If you overcook the lentils, they'll actually just become a part of the dish. It'll be very thick, and it will be. It's not that you can't eat that; it's just the appearance of it won't be as nice. You can really see the lentils there and the dice on the vegetables, and then you just really take that and just put it right on your rice. And that's it. It's very simple. If you do, by chance, have fresh herbs, for a dish like this, cilantro works great. Whether you're just kind of putting it on top, or you can you really just kind of running a knife through it, and then just a little bit on it. And there it is.
Looks nice. Could I eat that like over noodles or any other?
Oh, you could put this on anything. You really could. You could put it on egg noodles, put it on rice noodles. Yeah, this is kind of like almost like a goulash of some sort, where you're adding another component to it to make it even heartier. Really feed a family that's looking for something that's really nourishing and well made.
Great. Thank you. It looks very good. Makes me hungry for dinner.